This week on The Hustle, March Madness fever is spreading in the air. We take a look around the country at some of the hottest games. We get you up to speed on the NHL trade deadline, and we dive into some social media hot takes and your top hustle plays. All this and more on The Hustle. Welcome back to another episode of The Hustle, your home for sports on the go. I'm your host, Ryan DeFranzo, and joining me, we have Inside the Hustle analyst Brendan Capozzi and Mia Santinelli. Now let's tip off the show with some blood in the water between South Carolina and LSU. Obviously, two of the heavyweights in women's college basketball right now. What do you guys make of this brawl?
Well, it just really kind of caused a bad ending to a very great game, in terms of LSU. This kind of seemed it was kind of out of frustration. This stuff happens, though, when you are down. It's a lot of sports frustration. We kind of thought that maybe LSU could have won this game because they are the reigning national champions. But you know what? It happens. It's sports. But unfortunately, South Carolina, they're going to have a big loss coming up in their first game of the tournament.
Yeah, emotions run high, especially in games like this. Speaking from an athlete's perspective, I never think violence is the answer, but sometimes things just happen. And both teams took the time to apologize. Both coaches took the time to apologize. It's unfortunate that Camilo Cardoso is not going to be with the South Carolina Gamecocks for the first round of the tournament, but, there has to be some consequences.
Now moving on to a heavyweight all by herself, the new all-time college basketball leading scorer, Caitlin Clark, held nearly scoreless in the first half and erupting in the fourth quarter in overtime. What are your thoughts on the legendary game and career of Caitlin Clark?
Yeah, this was a really fun game to watch, and I think it was a little bit surprising that Caitlin Clark, with all of her dominance recently, especially throughout the past month, that she struggled in the first half. But that's what's so great about this Iowa basketball team is that she has teammates that make her great and that give her the opportunity to bounce back in the second half by doing their part as well.
Yeah, she's probably the greatest women's basketball player in college in history, passing Pistol Pete on the all-time scoring list, also scoring the NCAA women's record as well. She just continues to have an incredible career, and, she's going to go down as probably the greatest of all time.
Now let's move out west for a matchup between Stanford and USC to take a look at how the Pac-12 is stacking up this season.
A little California rivalry here, number 5 seed versus number 2. It was 74-61, so relatively a close game. Stanford was outscored in every single quarter by the Trojans. Cameron Brink, who's going to be a top 2 pick in the WNBA draft, had 19 points. Mackenzie Forbes of USC had 26 points. Credit to USC. They got the job done, and they got the upset.
Yeah, Juju Watkins has been one of the most outstanding freshman basketball players, and I think it really showed in this game. And, everyone is worried about the big dance, but winning these championship games, especially in a really great basketball conference like the Pac-12, it's really a great accomplishment for these ladies.
As we approach the tournament, we have to get through the regional championships first. So what game stood out most to you out of all the championships?
Yeah, I think we have to go back to that Big Ten championship game. I think just the way that Iowa was able to come back, force overtime, and then just have such a great performance in overtime. And it wasn't just Caitlin Clark. All of her teammates did such a remarkable job keeping themselves in this tournament and repeating as 3 times in a row Big Ten champions.
The greatest players that we ever see in basketball are able to rebound through difficulty, and Caitlin Clark exactly did that. She did everything that she could to help her teammates out, help herself out. This is her 3rd Big Ten championship, and it's very well deserved.
So South Carolina is 32-0 after their victory over LSU. Do you think this year they go the distance, or do you think there's someone standing in their way?
I'm not going to say that because, I think that people are underestimating LSU. Angel Reese is back for another year. She's the star player on this LSU team. South Carolina is number 1 in the SEC in defense and holding opponents to 56.3 points per game in the average. Number 1 in the SEC in field goal percentage. They have their legendary coach in Dawn Staley and, looking for their first shot since 2022, but I'm not going to count out LSU just yet.
I have to say that I don't see anybody beating this South Carolina team. Dawn Staley has done a remarkable job. They haven't lost a regular season game in over 700 days. I just don't see who could take them down at this point.
All right, so it's no secret that Caitlin Clark is the best player in the country, especially with all her records. But how will this translate to the next level?
Yeah, we we know Caitlin Clark, we know who she is. The list of all of her achievements is way too long to even know, but she's a first-team All-American. She's Big Ten Player of the Year, first team for the Big Ten. She made MVP of the tournament with her remarkable performance, especially in the game we just talked about. I think to say anything less than she will be remarkable and continue to leave her mark in the WNBA would be ridiculous.
She has superstar potential. And, you know, all the ticket prices in Iowa and Indiana are raising now because there's expectations that when she does go to the WNBA, the Indiana Fever are going to choose her with the number 1 pick. You know, it takes one superstar to change the entire franchise, and that's what she's done for Iowa. She's going to do the same in Indiana.
All right, now switching from women's basketball over to the men's side, we have 2 storied Blue Bloods with Duke and UNC, and another down-to-the-wire game. What can you tell me about these 2 teams?
Yeah, these teams are known as some of the powerhouses in a lot of sports around the country, but especially basketball. And UNC, you know, they missed the tournament last year. They got knocked out in the ACC regular conference tournament, and I think it was really a statement for them to sweep Duke on the season.
You know, yeah, as you just said, the number 1 seed coming into last year's tournament, you know, they weren't able to make the tournament overall, but, you know, big win against Duke, big sweep against Duke. I can expect them to be a top 3 seed upcoming in this NCAA tournament.
Now looking at one of the best conferences in the SEC, we have Alabama, Auburn, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Tennessee, who is currently ranked 5 in the country, and they have never made it to the Final Four. Is this the year they break through the wall?
I think so. You know, when you look at Tennessee, they are just absolutely stellar. 24-7 record. They are led by the SEC Player of the Year, Dalton Nett. He led the SEC in scoring, you know, and he's making a name for himself in Knoxville. They're ranked number 5 in the country right now. I expect big things from the Volunteers.
Yeah, I mean, they're 24-7, 14-4 in conference. Only dropping 4 conference games to a stacked SEC conference is really impressive. And I have to agree, I think they're going to go pretty far this year.
And we have to talk about last year's victors, UConn. They look pretty good this year. Are they going back-to-back?
I am going to say yes because, you know, I think they have the talent to do it. They're number 2 in the ranking. They are 28-3. They are going to win the Big East Championship this year. They dominated number 4 Marquette at the time, 81-53, and you're led by Dan Hurley, who's one of the best coaches in all of basketball. And they're looking to be the first team to repeat since the 2006-2007 Florida Gators.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say UConn would repeat, but that is such a hard thing to do. Credit to their women's team that did it back-to-back. That was absolutely stellar. I think they still have a remarkable team. You know, Dan Hurley getting coach of the Big East this year, coach of the year. But I just think there's too many other strong teams out there.
All right, so March is here. It's the season of upsets. What are some teams that you think can make some noise in this tournament?
Let's go up to Michigan. I'm not going to go with Michigan. I'm going to go with Michigan State. The Spartans, they're led by Tom Izzo. You cannot count out Tom Izzo. They're led by Tyson Walker, Big Ten honors, A.J. Hoggard, and Malik Hall. They're 18-13 on the year. I know that's not as impressive of a record, but when you look at their wins, they went to the Big House and they beat Michigan and they beat number 10 Illinois. That is one of my picks. I'm also going to go with FAU. Had the magical run to the Final Four last year. Not even a Power 5 school. That's something really crazy to think about. They are projected as a 7 seed, and they lost in a last-second Hail Mary to San Diego State last year. So, you know, they're definitely looking for some revenge in March.
Yeah, I think there's going to be tons of sleeper teams because the talent is just so high this year. But I'm really excited to see who's going to be the next Cinderella story. I'm looking for who's going to be the next FDU. Who's going to come out and really make some noise against all of these teams we've been talking about today.
All right, now looking down the road, only one team can come out on top. So who's it going to be?
I mean, I know we've talked about them already, but I think UNC has a really great opportunity to make a run at the championship. I mean, they have R.J. Davis, ACC Player of the Year. He got 68 of the 75 ballot votes. He's a senior. He's experienced. He's been leading this team to their 26-6 record, 17-3 in conference play. And, of course, it would just be such a great story to come back from missing the tournament to making it all the way this year.
You know, they are a great pick. But I'm still going to stick with my UConn Huskies. They're led by Stephen Castle, who is just 19 years old. He's going to be a top lottery pick in the draft. You know, I would love to see a UNC UConn. I would not mind that at all. 2 historic programs going at it for basically history, especially if you're looking at it from UConn's perspective.
All right, don't go anywhere because we're coming back with the NHL trade deadline, and be sure to stay tuned for a social media roller coaster. All this after the break on The Hustle.
The Hustle, brought to you by the Sitting Duck Tavern.
Welcome back to The Hustle, your home for sports on the go. Joining me now are The Hustle's NHL analyst Sean Gannon and Evan Cormier. I'm your host, Ryan DeFranzo. And let's get right onto the ice, and we're going to talk some NHL trades. Starting off, we look down in Florida, and the Panthers are looking to make some more deep runs in the playoffs. So what moves did they make to do so?
Look, they made a handful of good moves here, especially when it comes to what they did at the deadline. I'm looking at what it was that they had done, and honestly, I think that this team is gearing up for another deep playoff run. They were in the playoffs last year. They continue to strive to do well. They got the right players and right pieces that they needed. Hopefully they can make another deep playoff run, but it's going to come at the cost of the moves that they made.
Absolutely. With the addition of Tarasenko, this really might be the best roster in hockey.
All right, now looking up north at a team on the rise, the Vancouver Canucks are putting themselves on the radar with their young core. Now, what changes have they made to put themselves atop the Western Conference?
Yeah, well, before the season started, you were looking at the Canucks as a team that, if everything went wrong, they were still a playoff team. They've got the roster. I feel like this is a very sound team. Now with the new coach, they're really starting to put the pieces together. I don't think anybody saw Vancouver at the top of the West by the trade deadline, but this is not a team that I would want to see in the playoffs.
Yeah, and going off that, what's really been most impressive for them has been Thatcher Demko, their goalie this season with a .97% save, which is 6th best in the NHL. He has 5 shutouts, which is 3rd best in the NFL, and the best win-to-loss ratio at 34-13. All right, this Vancouver's Canuck team is built around their defense and what their goalie is able to do. They also boast 3 players with 76-plus points on the season. This is a team to be fearful of in the playoffs.
All right, so since we just had the NHL trade deadline, obviously there's winners and losers, but let's start with the biggest acquisition at the deadline.
I'm looking at the Florida Panthers and what they were able to do. Getting Vladimir Tarasenko was an absolutely brilliant move for this team. We just talked about them a little bit ago. They were just in the Stanley Cup last year. They had a tough one. But you're adding a guy with a lot of veteran experience. He has 44 goals in 97 postseason games. And he's been proven in season consistently throughout the season, going to 30 to 40 goals per year.
Absolutely, and then you look at Jake Guentzel. He's maybe the biggest name in the entire pool at the point. He's the best goal scorer. They went out and they got him. They added. This is definitely a team that got a lot better. The Carolina Hurricanes. They were a bubble team. They didn't have the best start to the season, but the Hurricanes went out and they got Guentzel, and now they're going to be a force in the East.
All right, now let's take a look at some of the winners from the deadline. Evan, who do you think made the best moves to solidify a run at the Cup?
As I mentioned, the Hurricanes were a team that desperately needed to buy if they wanted to compete with Boston and Florida, and what they got was the best goal scorer in Jake Guentzel. The second team I have here is the Knights. This is a team with high hopes coming into the year. Obviously, they struggled as the season started. They sat in 8th place right now, but going out and getting Noah Hanifin, they might have the best blue line in the entire league. They weren't done. The next day, they got Thomas Hertl, a solid forward. He'll be a 2nd or 3rd liner for Vegas. And then lastly, the Avs, man. This is a team that didn't really need the help. They were 2nd in the West, but that didn't stop them. They got 2 players. They got a blue liner and a forward, 2 pieces they'll be contributing immediately. So the Avalanche, the Knights, and the Hurricanes all geared up to make a Stanley Cup run.
Yeah, to me, I'm looking at also the Las Vegas Knights. They had a really hot start, like you said, started to sputter out. They've hit a little bit of the rut, but during this trade deadline, they didn't have to give up any of their key pieces. They added in their own guys. This team has a lot of proven talent. They have the aggression. They're going to be looking for a Stanley Cup championship.
So, Sean, we talked winners. Now let's talk losers. Who would you like to have seen more from through the deadline?
New Jersey Devils. What are you guys doing out there? You guys had a great season last year. It's been a tough one this year. They've had terrible goaltending. They got out and they couldn't get Jacob Markstrom in the trade. They ended up having to get and stick with Nico Daws and Akira Schmidt, who have not had the best seasons. The New Jersey Devils, this team has so much talent, and they have no defense whatsoever to back it up.
For me, it's going to be the Edmonton Oilers. They're a bubble team right now with one of the best lines in hockey. They needed depth. They needed to do something major, and they did nothing. They went out and got Henrique, who's having one of the best seasons. He's 34 years old, right? He's getting the most minutes, but that's because he's on the worst team in the NHL. Now you're adding Henrique to this line. He's going to be a 3rd liner, a bottom 6 kind of guy. I really don't think that that's going to take Edmonton from a bubble team to a Stanley Cup team.
All right, so you mentioned Edmonton. Let's talk about some players that didn't get dealt that you're surprised they didn't go anywhere.
It's got to be Linus Ullmark for the Bruins. This is a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations. Last year, they thought they were going to be the sure favor runaway team to win the Cup. They got knocked off by the Panthers. It looked bad at the time. Panthers ended up going to the Stanley Cup. Now they look like they're going back to the Stanley Cup, so it doesn't look so bad anymore. But regardless, they're sitting on Linus Ullmark when they have Jeremy Swayman. This is a team that's not getting as many goals as they need to get. They have stellar defense, stellar goaltending, but why sit on 2 starting goaltenders when you can go out and get a better forward?
Keeping it in the goalie community, I'm looking at Jacob Markstrom. There was so much talk about him going to New Jersey, that it was going to happen. The Flames are looking at a slight rebuild, and it just ended up not being able to work. The Devils didn't make any sort of acquisition for him whatsoever. The Calgary Flames decided not to move on it whatsoever. Couldn't agree with you more, though, with Linus Ullmark. But the Bruins do now get to boast the best tandem, I think, in goalies.
Absolutely, that
All
means
right,
a
now
lot.
on the other side of all the trade talk, who impressed you guys the most and is making the best run at Lord Stanley's Cup?
I gotta say the Boston Bruins, just because I feel like they have 2 great lines, 2 great goaltenders, as you mentioned. They don't really have big names in the defensive pairings, but I think they've got a great coach, a great system. I think they can beat any team in the league in a 7-game series. So I'm gonna go with the Bruins.
I'm going to go, and I'll throw it towards the Vegas Knights again. I know they've struggled. They had a very good trade deadline, but what I think that this team is built around is proven. We saw what they were able to do last year when they won the World Cup. They're hungry. They're determined. They're going to work their way out of this little rut they've been hitting on at the moment. And I would not be sleeping on the Las Vegas Golden Knights come playoff time.
That's going to wrap up the NHL trade talk. Sean and Evan, thank you for joining me. But stay tuned because we're going to take a look at some social media hot takes, and stay tuned for your top hustle plays right after this break.
Welcome back to The Hustle. That's Mia Santinelli. I'm Brendan Capozzi. It is time to talk about some of the social media hot topics that are going around the sports world. Let's start off with Sonny Dykes, head coach of TCU, talking about the college football expansion and teams getting a bye. He said automatic first-round byes for the Big Ten and SECs at the NFL, saying the Cowboys get a first-round bye since they have more fans than the Bengals. I absolutely agree with Sonny Dykes here. You know, it doesn't matter what conference you're in, you do not get a bye because of the conference that you're in. You need to earn everything. You need to earn everything in order to be given. Champions earn everything because of heart, hustle, integrity, and doing everything right every single day. And I really think that in order to do the right thing, you need to give the teams that are the best in the country. It doesn't matter what conference you are in. This is a very controversial topic in sports, and I really think that Sonny Dykes is absolutely correct.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think the college football playoff has had so much controversy and so much backlash recently that I think the idea of giving any team a bye week is going to be controversial. I think if you're a college athlete and the college football season is so short in the first place, you're going to want to keep playing. You're going to keep in that routine, consistently playing week to week to week. And if you're the best, you're going to want to compete and show them that you are the best.
Let's go to court storming. Jay Billis had a very interesting quote to say about this, as this is one of the big topics in sports. He talks about how, you know, fans should honestly be arrested for a situation like this. You know, if you are Jay Billis, he went to Duke. You know, here's the quote right here. If they wanted to stop it, they could stop it tomorrow. You don't have to stop the court storming one time. All you have to do is once they're on the court, don't let them off. Just say you're all detained and give them all citations or arrest them if you want to, and the court stormings will stop the next day. Jay Billis, you are absolutely correct. I definitely agree with this. We saw players like Caitlin Clark and Kyle Filipowski from Duke get hurt from situations like this. It is absolutely dangerous, you know, because at the end of the day, you want to do everything that you can to protect the players.
Yeah, I think I can see both sides of it. I see that, you know, it's part of the celebration and the atmosphere to have your teams rushing to support you and being part of that team culture with you. But at the same time, people are getting hurt. And I think it's the player's safety that has to come first and foremost, especially at times like this. We're going into March Madness. We can't risk people getting hurt when some upsets happen in these conference tournaments.
So now let's go to soccer, Mia. What do you got on soccer?
Yeah, so the U.S. women's national team, you know, has dipped down a little bit, but they just competed in the Gold Cup. And this quote came from Julie Foudy, former U.S. Women's National Team World Cup champion turned soccer analyst. She said, "Put a damn crown on Nair, royalty, #Gold Cup." Now, she's been following this very closely, as she does all U.S. Women's National Team's doings. Alyssa Nair, she was a rock star. Despite the conditions, she saved 3 penalty kicks. She scored 1. And I would say, for this new legacy of the women's national team, they are just getting started. What do you think?
One of the best goalkeepers in the world, on one of the best teams in the world for the United States women's national team. She's definitely someone you want as your goalkeeper. A lot of exciting things to come for USA women's soccer.
Yeah, definitely. I think winning the Gold Cup as well just put the icing on the cake and proved that they are here. They are back, and they are doing U.S. soccer the way U.S. soccer has been expected. Don't go anywhere. Up next, we have our top hustle plays of the week.
The Hustle is brought to you by Goodfellas Pizzeria, established in 1999.
Welcome back to The Hustle, your home for sports on the go. I'm Ryan DeFranzo, and joining me in the studio now is our Hustle analyst, Fred Shin. And it's time we finally get to break down your top Hustle plays. We start off with the Minnesota Wild making an absolutely wild move in overtime. Fred, break it down for us.
You described it perfectly. A wild play. You see Fleury leaving the ice right there. The goalie, the Minnesota Wild pulled their goalie in overtime to try and get the win here. You see them trying to find the opening here in overtime to eventually end up with a goal. It ends in Matt Boldy's hands right here, and he ends it with an amazing slap shot. High risk, high reward situation. They needed this goal to make a playoff push. An amazing play.
Yeah, it's kind of like a power play as we see the Wild up a man. It's 4-on-3. That's only the third time that the goalie has been pulled in overtime, and it's high risk, high reward. As you said, they ended up winning that one there. Now moving off the ice, we take it to the pitch with a women's soccer match between USA and Brazil. Take it away, Fred.
Yes, USA versus Brazil. We see it in the corner here with Rodman passing it over to Fox, and she makes the perfect pass in to Lindsey Horan for the header. An amazing goal. A very hard goal to make as well. USA win this 1-0, the only goal of the game, and the USA proves why they are still on top of women's soccer.
That's exactly what you want to see from your captain and Lindsey Horan as they win the inaugural cup for the women's team in that Gold Cup final. Now, for all of us here on The Hustle, from Ryan Franzo, Fred Shin, our analyst Mia Santinelli, Brennan Capozzi, Evan Cormier, and Sean Gannon, everyone in the control room, from producer Cam McLaren, director Robbie Finizio and TD, Augie Guillermo, Connor Gilchrist on the jib. Thank you for watching The Hustle, and be sure to tune in next week where we take it back to Sports Buzz.